Look at us, the Wedding Photography Podcast, back again. Or you might not be looking at us. You might be looking at your podcast app. That's fine too. This is actually episode 101 of Wedding Photography with Taylor Jackson, the podcast that I've been doing, I believe, since 2017. And maybe it went on hiatus for the last 8 months. I couldn't tell you that unless you scroll down and see that the last episode was 8 months ago. In which case, you've solved the mystery. Today, we're going to be talking about something that's very important to me, wedding photography. Specifically, my current gear for wedding photography. What is more fun than a podcast about gear? Nothing. If you're watching the video, you can see beside me I have a Nikon ZF, and it actually has an adapted Leica lens on it, which doesn't work so good. So if you're dreaming of getting the ZF and putting a Leica adapted lens on, they perform a heck of a lot weirder than you'd anticipate. Most lenses, when you set it to infinity, if it's a 35mm lens, infinity probably begins maybe 20 feet away from you, maximum. This begins 100 feet away from you. So if you're at infinity, for some reason, infinity is 100 feet. I don't understand the physics, but we're gonna sort it out together. And eventually I'll hopefully be using this lens, but otherwise I won't be. I absolutely will not be using it on a wedding day. But before we get to the topic at hand, which is gear, I'm going to talk to you about a few things right now. Number one, Canada Photo Summit. It's coming up. If you're interested in visiting us here in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, hanging out with myself, Sam Hurd, Jason Vincent, Photo Me Ike, Jacob Clark, my wife Lindsay, myself, Taylor Jackson, and our friend Brittany, who is a high-end event planner, both in weddings as well as for brands like Burberry, and all the high-end luxury fashion brands that you may have come in contact with over your lifetime. I apologize if I forgot anyone. Anyways, Canada Photo Summit, April 22nd to 25th, kinda. 24th, technically it ends, but there's a party on the night, so stay over probably till the 25th. And the first day, so the 22nd, will actually be live shoots. So we'll go around, we'll take some pictures and have some fun. And then the next 2 days, well, they're also fun, but more classroom focused, less out in the field taking pictures. I will also be at WPPI and also Imagen USA, and also way up north in Florence, Italy. I'm speaking at way up north in Florence, Italy. I am speaking at WPPI. I am hanging out in and around Imagen USA, Focal, a company that I'm a part owner of. They can build your website if you want. We have a booth at WPPI as well as Imagen USA. If you're not familiar with those two specifically, they're convention-based learning experiences. So there's a huge trade show floor where you can go and you can touch all the lenses you want. You can come and hang out with us at the Focal booth. In fact, Ben will even build you a website while you stand there in like 3 minutes. It's just a mock-up, a template, but you can see what it looks like. And if you do want to make that a live, actual real life website, you can do that. You can sign up there. And that is kind of one side of the show. And then the other side of the show is learning, that there are classes and speakers that you can attend. I am stacked at WPPI. So my time slot is also Jerry Gionas's time slot, who is one of my favorite people and also photographers. He's one of the guys that taught me so much about posing and being an introvert and getting a little bit more comfortable. He's amazing. Unfortunately, we speak at the same time, as well as Susan Stripling, as well as like 3 other people that I want to go see. So unfortunately, you got to pick. So you don't have to pick me. I'll understand if you don't pick me, but if you are at WPPI, the time slot that I'm in is pretty stacked. So I think it's also technically the closing time slot of the entire conference, and I think it goes into the party after that. But yeah, keep an eye, maybe at least during WPPI, maybe put notifications on for my Instagram stories, because we will be doing some bonus events and I will be announcing them primarily there, I would say, because it's easiest and some of them might be a little bit more last minute. Now, let's talk about gear. So the gear that I was using last year, I primarily used Sony. So I switched from Canon into Sony last year, and I was using 2 cameras. I was using the Sony A7R Mark V, which is their newest higher megapixel camera. It's not the new, because the new one is the A9 Mark III, which I got to do the pre-production. I was at the announcement. They let us take some pictures with it. I'll be getting a production copy, I believe, next week to shoot a YouTube video, as well as to shoot a wedding day, a real life wedding day with. So I will report back on that. In my experience, it's an incredible camera. The price point is just a little bit higher than something like the Sony a7 IV. The Sony a7 IV was my camera body for photo video hybrid coverage days. The reason for that is because the buffer seemed to be a lot faster. So I could do a bunch of photos and then switch to video mode and be recording. That's important if you're doing hybrid coverage. The Sony a7R Mark V is a higher megapixel camera, and the benefit of that on wedding days, if you can only do one, I would say a7 IV is a better option, all things considered. The reason that I like the A7R Mark V was that I set my top button to go into APS-C crop mode, which is basically crops in my camera. but I think you still get 33 megapixels or something, like quite enough when you're in crop mode on that camera, because the main sensor is such a high megapixel camera. Whereas the Sony a7 IV, you get, I think, 18 or a little bit under 20 megapixels when you're in crop mode, which is still fine, but I just preferred to have the flexibility of the a7R Mark V. It was also a camera that I was using for a lot of travel and landscape work, where I relied a little bit more on having those high megapixel files. But when it came to hybrid photo video days, the buffer was a lot slower to clear. So I wasn't comfortable using it in that environment. So that's why I kind of switched off and on both cameras. Then towards the end of the year, or I guess even in the middle of the year, so around August, the Nikon Z8 was released, and it was an incredible advancement, I would say, in terms of Nikon, for not specifically because it was all the tech that came from the Z9, and it trickled down to the Z8 when the Z8 got smaller, and it also got less expensive. So an incredible package if you're able to afford a Z8. It is an incredible main camera if you want to be a Nikon shooter, or if you already are and you have some f-mount lenses that you just want to adapt, and it's a little bit easier to get into the mirrorless space coming from DSLR. And then in the fall, Nikon did another incredible camera, which is the ZF, which is the camera that's beside me here on the video. And it's the camera that I've been using the most since it came out. I've been using it for my personal work. I've been using it for travel work. The only time that I don't use it is when I want to use a larger Nikon lens. So if I'm going to be using the 51-2 or maybe the Tamron 35-150, that is the time that I would prefer to be on the Z8 rather than the ZF. But that preference really just comes down to ergonomics. And if I was, for instance, shooting an entire wedding day and maybe I was only using that Tamron 35-150 or the 51-2 for maybe 1 to 2 hours in that wedding day, I would be fine to put up with the ergonomic awkwardness of having a larger lens on this camera. I also have the attachment grip as well. The newer one, NEEWER, actually comes with a cool little red line or orange-ish line like the Nikon F3 did. So I kind of prefer that grip because at least on the black camera body, it makes it look like an F3, which I kind of dig. But SmallRig, I think, are the official ones that are the official provider of that grip, which is a little bit weird. I think in Japan, Nikon actually produced their own, or maybe they just aftermarket brand it. But a bit weird that a key piece that I think every single wedding photographer should have for their camera, which is that bonus little grip, isn't produced or sold by Nikon, I guess, in North America. But that's fine, I guess. So Nikon system-wise, I would be in the Nikon ZF or the Z8. Those would be my two main recommendations for Nikon right now. For Sony, if you have the money and also you want to get into high-end sports photography where you're shooting 120 frames per second RAW, the A9 III is obviously an incredible option, but I would push you in the direction of the Sony a7 IV, which is, I think, the most general, all-around great Sony camera body. Barring any other releases, I am aware of absolutely nothing at this time. And from what I've heard kind of throughout the industry, it seems like this coming year is going to be a little bit of a slower release year for all camera companies. So we're not going to be seeing a camera release every week and a half like we did last year. But there are a lot of rumors out there, and if you cruise those rumors websites, I am sure that you will be excited about the potential of things existing, and sometimes they end up existing, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it takes 4 years for them to come to market. Sometimes it gets down the entire product pipeline and marketing decides that this camera isn't going to sell, and engineering is like, I guess we just throw those plans in the garbage then. And that's a bit of a bummer. The camera that I would be the most excited to see would be the Sony RX1R Mark III, and I have no idea if that's ever going to exist. It seems like such a niche product, but I feel like it's gaining momentum again on YouTube and on social media, so maybe that will push Sony into more of a development channel with that, and that is my hope, because that's an incredible piece of kit, and I would love to have one. Maybe not so much for weddings, but it's kind of that perfect travel camera, especially if they coupled it with some new video features. Next up on the Canon side of things, Canon R6, the original, would still be my go-to. The R6 Mark II, Lindsay's been using all year, and she's had mixed results. So we're trying to troubleshoot a variety of problems. She actually sent her first R6 Mark II back because it just kept locking up and creating weird errors. We swapped cards, so it wasn't the cards. We swapped batteries. We were using the official Canon batteries. We can't figure out why it's having these issues. We've updated firmware, and it's just been a little bit of a problem, both of those cameras. So the original one that ended up going back, as well as the new one that we have. And that's a bit of a bummer. So because of that, I think the R6, the original, is a heck of a lot more stable. And if you are somebody that's just doing photography only, the R6 is an incredible option. The R6 Mark II unlocks some more video features and specifically limits the overheating. So the original R6, for photography, you're fine. But if you're doing video clips with it and you're doing 4K 60, for instance, and you're out in the hot sun, the original R6 is going to overheat pretty quickly. And what that means is that it allows you to shoot a less long clip every time you hit the start, stop, record button. The next time that you're able to record, you're able to do 5 minutes, and you're able to do 3 minutes and 2 minutes. And it's not a card space issue. It's just that it's only allowing you to record that much because it's on its way to overheating, and it's not awesome. So if you're into video, R6 Mark II. If you're into photography only, R6 is an incredible deal. Now, into lenses that I found myself using the most for last year. I was always a huge advocate of using the 85mm lens for everything. If you're on YouTube and you watch back some of the older full wedding days, I would shoot pretty much the entire day on an 85mm f1.4 Nikon lens. And I loved the experience, I love the photos. This past year, or maybe 2 years ago, I noticed that I was doing that a little bit less. And then this year I've noticed that I'm on the 35, maybe a lot more than I would normally be. I think this also goes with the style in general for wedding photography, that an 85mm lens with that really shallow depth of field almost feels like it's trying too hard to be editorial, and a 35 is a little bit more real life, a little bit more real moment, and I feel like that is what the industry has trended towards. And I feel like that's also with the acceptance of film photography again, specifically underexposed film photography. I feel like that has really pushed wedding photography in a direction of that you don't want it to look overproduced and super polished, that doing a lot less, even going in the opposite direction of that, is actually more desirable by most clients at this point, especially younger clients. So I find myself using 35, 1.4 a lot more for, I guess, for Sony specifically. For Nikon, I've been using the 40mm f2, which is, I would say, comparable to that. And for Canon, Lindsay is pretty much, I would say, more 24-70 than I've ever seen before. I also use my 24-70 for Nikon a lot as well. And if you are a Nikon or a Sony shooter, you have access to the Tamron 35-150 f2 to f2.8, or if you're on Sony, you also get access to the Imagen as well. They make the same lens. And that is awesome because it really is a true all-day lens if you want it to be. I use it for, usually I'll use a 35 prime for getting ready, and then I'll switch to my 35-150 for the ceremony, maybe a few family photos, maybe a few photos of the couple, and then I'll usually switch to maybe an 85 or a 50. But that lens is so nice to have during a wedding ceremony. Canon also, I don't know if it's good or bad yet. I will hold it at Imagen USA in a few weeks time from now. The 24-105, I think it is. It looks large, but it might actually end up being the same weight as the Tamron 35-150. And it's a 24-105 f2.8 the entire way, but it's very big. And if you're somebody that's comfortable shooting on a 35 or 24 prime, to have a lens that is the size of a 70-200 or even larger, and to be at 24 on a lens that big it hurts my brain a little bit to comprehend that, but it does the job. It will absolutely do an entire wedding day for you if you don't mind carrying the weight, and also the cost is quite up there. I'm hopeful that Canon will start allowing more third-party developers to create lenses for them over this year. I think Miyake is already doing 1 or 2 lenses for them, and hopefully that is opening things up for Canon to allow third parties. From a business perspective, from protecting the fact that they need to make money in order to continue to make cameras, it makes total sense that they've kind of locked third-party manufacturers out, because if you ended up buying a Canon camera and then you only bought Sigma or Tamron glass, they wouldn't be, I think they still get money off if they lease a lens to be allowed to use their mount. I think they still do get paid, but I don't think they get paid as much as if you are buying that Canon glass. So they've definitely pushed people out of that. I will still say, and it's still functional on Lindsay's R6 Mark II, the Samyang 85 f1.4 is still probably my favorite lens for the entire Canon mirrorless system right now. It's an autofocus lens. They are super hard to find now because they're kind of contraband. Canon sued them, or at least opened some sort of legal proceeding against them for unofficially using their mount without permission. So yeah, that's a bit of a bummer, but if you can find that lens, it still does work. It works to like 90% of the autofocus points. So there's little bars around your screen where the autofocus will work, and it works for pretty much the entire sensor, but not all of it. So that's, I guess, something to be aware of. But your subject's always going to be within the box, because it's a pretty forgiving box that they actually give to the Samyang lens. This all said, next firmware update, they could just kill this lens and brick it. They did that on the R3. One of the firmware updates came out and it made it read F0 for me. And then there was also the weirdest issue ever of all time, that I was taking pictures, and I have the sequence of photos. The lens read, so I was taking pictures. It was just random couples that were at the wedding. Some of them were in the wedding party. Some of them just wanted a photo with their partner. They came over, I was taking pictures. My lens read F0. I was like, that's weird. I hit the shutter again, it came back up, which is nice. And it somehow switched my camera to only be shooting JPEG. So there's like a 4-second delay in between that happening. I was taking pictures, realized there's a problem, my screen is black, hit the shutter again, turns back on, and somehow my camera is now shooting JPEG only. I have no idea how that happened. It never happened again, but yeah, for third-party lenses, they behave a bit strange when they're not officially allowed to be on the system. One lens that I've completely pretty much gotten rid of in my entire, all of my kits is the 70-200. The Tamron 35-150 kind of took over for it, or even I'm happier using a 24-70. This is also based on the environments that I'm in, that I'm very rarely in a gigantic church, and if I was, it would be maybe a tool for either the Tamron or something like a 70-200. For Canon specifically, the 70-200 f2.8 is incredible. That is one lens that I love, and I wish that it was for every system. It's so compact, it's so lightweight, and the quality is very, very, very nice. It's also a lens that realistically you could shoot most of a day with. I feel like a few of our friends call it the lazy person lens, that you just kind of put that on and you can just kind of do the entire day zooming around and get a lot of incredible photos from it. But that said, I don't own any current 70-200s. They have all been sold at BJ Photo in Waterloo. Not our sponsor, but if you do happen to live in this area or you're fine with getting things in the mail, they are the people that I go to all the time. I absolutely love the experience there. And I also have a lot of consignment products up there. So check out their used listings and maybe buy some of my things, because there's a few of them up there. So over this year, my predictions for gear is that I will be using the Sony A9 Mark III for a little bit of the season. I don't, again, recommend that you just hop in and get this camera. It solves a few unique problems for me as a hybrid photo video creator. So right now, Sony on the A7 IV and the A7R Mark V, if you do 4K 60, so you're shooting 4K 60 frames a second, it actually punches in, and it's a small crop on the Sony A7R Mark V, and it's an APS-C like full 1.5 times crop on the Sony A7 IV. And that means that I'm actually shooting, when I'm doing a hybrid photo video day, I'm actually still shooting HD at 60 frames a second, so HD 60p, and that's fine, but it doesn't really give you the leverage. So I upscale it to 4K for delivery and it looks fine and nice, but it doesn't really allow me to crop any of the frames. So if there's somebody on the edges that I want to zoom in a little bit, as soon as you start to zoom in an HD frame, you really start to notice a bit of a quality drop. So I would be very, very happy to shoot 4K 60 on a wedding day, and the A9 Mark III allows me to both have a very fast camera as well as shoot 4K 60 with no crop. So this is a huge thumbs up for me, specifically as a hybrid photo video creator. The downside with Nikon is that still to this day, so there's two cards in here. There's actually a micro SD, which I'm fine with. I use it as internal storage, and an SD card, but the video files only shoot to one of the cards. This is the same on the Nikon Z9 as of the time of recording this, which is also crazy, and the Z8. So everything only shoots to one card for video on Nikon. And I'd be comfortable on the Z8 or the Z9 because it's a CF Express card, and the process would be I'd get home, I wouldn't pull the card out and jam it in a reader. I'd actually use USB-C to connect to my computer and download everything. That's the correct way to do it, because the most likely time a card's gonna fail is when you're actually pulling it out and putting it in, or you physically even lose it. But I like having two backup cards, and I don't understand why Nikon can't do it. Canon can do it just fine. Sony can do it. Come on, Nikon, please. And because of that, and because most of my days are hybrid photo video days, over 90% of them, I think, looking at this year's calendar, I will likely just have to remain on Sony unless a firmware update arrives or a new Nikon camera arrives that allows me to shoot to both cards with video. That's the only barrier for me to be using Nikon more often, because I love the colors, I love the files, I love the lenses, specifically for the Z glass, as well as all the F-mount lenses that you can use. I have a lot of them because I shot Nikon from 2005 up until about 2020. And I can use all my old lenses through the adapter, and most of them are autofocus, which is nice. And if you want to use older lenses that don't actually, if they're manual focus only lens, there is a TechArt, TechArt adapter, and you have to get, so that adapter goes to Leica M, and it will make that Leica M manual focus only lens into an autofocus lens, which is crazy. And then there's a little adapter that you can put on to go to F-mount, so you can use any of your Nikon lenses. I think that's the way it works. Maybe you can get one that just goes straight from Z to F, but I don't think so. And now that we're moving into conference season, I'll be able to do more podcasts with more of my friends. It's nice to do podcasts in the same room as people and not just do a video over the internet, which is fine, but I feel like it's a lot more fun to do it in real life. So A lot more to come over this year, over the next couple of months. If there's any guests that you would love to see, feel free to put them in the comments below. I would be happy to get in touch with them and see if they'd want to be part of this. And that is all for me today. Hope that you've enjoyed your day. Again, Canada Photo Summit happening here soon. I think there's very few tickets left, maybe 9 tickets total left. There are still a few though. And if for whatever reason it's sold out by the time you're listening to this, maybe send me a DM on Instagram and I can see if somebody is selling it, because last minute some people just can't arrive, or maybe they booked a wedding and they're coming in from Texas or something and they're not able to attend anymore. I can hopefully facilitate some sort of transfer of that ticket for you. And otherwise, if you're at WPPI, Imaging USA, come say hello at the Focal booth. Come by, get a website. Also, if you aren't a Focal customer yet, you can go to the website bookfocal.com to learn a little bit more if you want, but they will take your images. So you sign up, you send them 10, 15, 20, 50 of your favorite images, and they will just build you an entire website. So they'll check out your current website, they'll pull some copy from it. Maybe they'll change some of that copy to make it a little bit better. They'll build out your packages for you. They'll do everything and build you an entire website that is ranking for SEO very, very quickly. We've had some incredible success with people ranking first page in pretty competitive markets within just a couple of days. And also the Insta blogging feature, which if you're uploading an Instagram carousel of like 10 images from a wedding day, you can actually just click a button, or I guess there's a few buttons to click and a few options, and it will just make an entire blog post for you from that carousel on Instagram and put that on your blog. And also, again, it'll be ranking for SEO and it does all the best practices. So it's a really, really cool feature. Not only that, Focal also runs your entire backend, their CRM system, so you can do all your contracts and your bookings, everything on there. So check it out, bookfocal.com/Taylor if you're interested, because those websites look great. They showcase your work. They're actually designed to get you booked with calls to action, and also they're just ranking on SEO very, very quickly. That is all for today. Thanks for being here. Episode number 101 of the podcast. See you again next time, I hope. Hopefully it's less than 8 months from now. Who knows though? Anything can happen in this world. We really know very little. And if you know where that quote's from, thumbs up.